are more than 100 unique styles of beer, each with their own set of ingredients, process, guidelines, history, and experience. If you're a beer lover, an industry leader, or somewhere in between, a better knowledge of beer style will improve your life and your work.
Welcome to A Sense of Beer Style, essential beer style training for those who want to lead in food and beverage. I'm Julia Herz.
And I'm Jeremy Storton.
We're advanced Cicerones, beer judges, home brewers, and we're excited to guide you through the vast and wonderful world of beer styles.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Sense of Beer Style podcast. Hello, Julia.
Hi, Jeremy. Very excited to be here today.
Good. This is a fun one. We are entering the world of strong Belgian ale. So Belgian ale, that's amazing. Strong, that's also not bad. So we're getting into the Belgian Blond ale today. Blonde, there's no E in the spelling when we're talking about the Belgian version. It's just B-L-O-N-D. If you're looking at a French Blonde or American Blonde, then there's an E. But the Belgian does not have an E. That is just a little detail that you guys get for free. But this is in the proliferation of post-World War II, when you could have any beer you wanted so long as it was yellow and fizzy all around the world. This is one of the products that we got as a result of that post-war mentality. This was the Belgians' answer to the call for pale ale, much like the American lager, much like the international lager, much like the Duvel or the Golden Strong that we'll talk about in another Stylecast. We wanted pale beer, but the regions that are most famous for their beer wanted to keep their own personality, but they wanted it to deliver to that market demand. This is the product, right? So we're going to talk about the Belgian Blonde today, but let's kick it off with the ingredients.
Ingredients are key, as always, and there's really not a lot of brewing process to this, brewing process-wise, that ties to the ingredients and sharing the profile for a Belgian Blonde. Maybe fermented at a little bit more warmer ale yeast temperatures, but that's kind of about it. There's not a lot on the books when you read these recipes on you need to do this technique to produce these results. So it really is about the ingredients and traditional Pilsen malt from Belgium. So there's Belgian Pilsner malt, there's German Pilsner malt. You would want to use Belgian Pilsner malt. It's a very pale malt, really low kiln temperatures, absolutely not roasted. And aromatic malts is kind of the general kicker. You know, you could sneak in some color, maybe some Vienna malt. I would be surprised. But the true base malt is that Pilsner malt that's going to give you the sugars. And then sugar, speaking of those or other adjuncts, is allowed to dry it out, help it be more fermentable, but no big Belgian candy sugars or sugars that are going to bring flavor as that adjunct. It's more about being a fermentable to supplement that Belgian Pilsner base malt. And then Belgian Abbey style yeast. Jeremy, we totally should do, right? This is a Stylecast for Sense of Beer Style for those that listen regularly. And we also do prepisodes on beer topics. And one day, trust me, J and J are going to let it rip when we're done through all the style guidelines getting covered in 2021 BJCP styles. And one of the things, Jeremy, that we could really do is a show on Abbey beers, Abbey style beers, and Trappist beers, because that's a whole topic within itself. And the style guidelines for BJCP emphasize Belgian Abbey type yeast. This is a yeast that certainly might have, originated, been smuggled, transferred over from Trappist breweries. But Abbey style beers are not run by the monks. One of the most popular examples of Belgian Blonde Ale is probably still owned by AB InBev. You know, the big conglomerate have bought up many of the breweries. So anyway, this Abbey style yeast means really just Belgian style yeast that's not a Trappist brewery, but it's ale yeast. That's really important because esters are a big part of this flavor profile. So are kind of moderated phenols. And then your traditional continental hops that are really not there for flavor, but more for the bittering balance. And then spices aren't traditionally added, but they can be allowed in a light touch, a light hand form for this style.
Yeah, and I think it would go to say that a lot of the Belgian beers, the sours notwithstanding, but a lot of the Belgian beers that we've come to love are really fermentation driven or fermentation balanced. And the hops really take a back seat in all these styles. And you also said, adding some sugar. A lot of the Belgian styles add extra sugar because we want to dry out the body. We want to make it very, very carbonated. And you'll notice a trend with all of these Belgian style beers that the carbonation is high, the body is low, and that's for a reason. That's how they like it, and that's what makes them ultimately really great food pairing beers as well. So let's talk about the appearance. For those of you watching, I'm sorry I don't have one in front of me, but I'll just describe some that I've had in the past. These are typically, it's a blonde, folks. So we're talking yellow to gold. Julia mentioned you might have some different malts in there to kind of add some flavor, but they're going to be really light and low. Lovabond caramel malts, if at all, because it is going to be still within that blonde or dirty blonde range. This beer should be very, very clear, maybe even brilliant, maybe even to the point where you could read a book through your glass. But it's going to be very clear nonetheless. The foam on this sucker is going to be fantastic. If you pour it well, folks, you're going to have this beautiful foam head on the top of that. It's going to be dense. It's going to be rocky. It's going to be moussey. And if you have a nice, good, clean glass, you're going to end up with some beautiful Belgian lacing as well. And they call it lacing because it's reminiscent of grandma's doily that would end up on the table type of thing. And it's a beautiful thing. And you know that your beer is good. You know your glass is clean when you see that. But along with that, this foam is going to last for days. There's going to have fantastic retention on it. That's what I expect out of my Belgian blonde. How about the aroma?
Aroma will lead into flavor. We always say that. So
Yeah.
I'll cruise through this so we can kind of really hover on flavor. And the malt, that Belgian Pilsner malt expression is going to come through as kind of maybe soda crackers, a lightly toasty, not all the way to biscotti or cashew. So just expect that. And if you don't really know what that is, go into any homebrew shop and chew on some Belgian Pilsner malt. Any homebrew shop will allow you to take a little malt and try it. And then you're really looking for the yeast profile in this one. The fruity esters that I mentioned, orange and lemon comes up a lot. And some people think that Belgian blondes have that added to this style. And it's mostly those flavor profiles because of the yeast and the expression. So it's a beautiful thing that yeast could bring that to the table so much that somebody would think that you literally added maybe some oranges or some lemon. But most of the time that's esters from the yeast. And then the phenols that I mentioned could be kind of spicy pink peppercorn types of phenols, but you don't want it aggressive. So it goes to Band-Aid or too clovey. Maybe a little bit of vanilla in my experience has been in the background. The hoppy notes I mentioned shouldn't really be a big emphasis in the aroma, but a little bit of spicy continental or noble hops is allowed to be noticed. And then the light touch of ethanol. So you might get a little waft or whiff of ethanol in your nose when you're smelling it. And then you're just going to get an essence of like that honey or Pilsner malt notes when you are giving it a good sniff.
Yeah, everything that you just said about aroma really does translate over to flavor. This is kind of like a mellow, mild malt balanced beer. The fermentation is in relation to all the other Belgian beers. It's really kind of mild on the fermentation character, and of course, the hops are taking a back seat. So this is a very easy drinking, quaffable beer. The malt is going to come across as this low to moderate, just grainy, crackery sweetness. Maybe a little bit of light honey will come through. The hops that you will taste them, but like I said, they're going to backseat. But we all have had those backseat drivers, so that can come through as a little bit of like low to moderate. That I don't like the word spicy for these hops. Spicy means something hot. This is spice like. This is garden herb. This is twiggy. This is maybe a little bit floral and maybe earthy hop. It depends if they use the kind of a Germanic style hops or a British style hops. Both are fair game. So it really depends on which way it goes with that. The bitterness can be moderate to high. I haven't had one of these with a high bitterness. When I think of a high bitterness, I'm thinking an American IPA, and I have not had a Belgian blonde that gives me that sense of bitterness. So I'm going to back away from that high, even though it says it in the guidelines. I'm going to back away from that and just kind of go with a moderate bitterness at most. A light touch of alcohol is perfectly okay, but these esters are going to come through that the citrus fruits, the lemon, the orange, along with some of those beautiful phenols and peppery spice-like characters going to come through, and it's just really easy going, but just really interesting for a light beer on a warm day. How about the mouthfeel?
Mouthfeel is centric. Many Belgian beers, most styles will have a lot of carbonation. So medium
Yeah.
high to high carbonation is a big aspect, and that adds to the quenchability. And you want medium body. It's got some residual sugar. When we talk about the vital stats, you'll see that. And then that light to kind of moderate alcohol warmth also from the aroma will be evident on the palate when you are tasting it. But it should be smooth, not hot, right? Kind of really seductive and enticing, not boozy, so to speak. And then that mouth feel will also be enhanced. The color foam that Jeremy talked about in appearance could be creamy textures from this beer style too, particularly because of the carbonation and some protein content.
Yeah. Now, when we compare this style, if we were to compare this to like an American blonde, for example, well, an American blonde is going to have more American ingredients, more American hop character, and the Belgian blonde will have more of the continental hop, European hop character, and more of the Belgian phenols. And that's really where they're both light, they're both easy drinking, but they're not. They're distant cousins. They're not siblings for sure because of those differences. If we were to compare this to, we could say that an older or bigger sibling to this Belgian blonde would be the Golden Strong, the Belgian Golden Strong that we'll talk about in a different style cast. It's a light beer. It's easy drinking. You have these beautiful citrus flavors that come through, but the Belgian Golden Strong is much stronger than this, but there's a lot of flavor overlap there. There's a lot of experience overlap there. So if you want a BGS or a Belgian Golden Strong Light, then the Belgian Blonde would be a great way to go with that. Those are the best comparisons I can make to these. How about the commercial examples?
Great analogy there too, right? That little baby beer or session version of
Yeah.
a Belgian Golden Strong. I've literally brewed one of those, a Belgian Golden Strong, and intended to be that style. It was too watery, classic home brewer mistake. So I started calling it a Belgian Golden Session, and it could be a Belgian Blonde. Like
Perfect.
that. That's genius. I love it. And so
Yeah.
commercial examples. This is one that's easier to calibrate with because you've got a lot of the institutionalized breweries either still on their own or having been bought up, still surviving and thriving. And so you're going to be able to find examples of these at your better beer provider. The Affigem Blonde, Corson Donk Blonde, La Trappe Blonde, which is a regular mainstay that I see a lot. Leffe Blonde really did help create the style.
Yes.
And Grimbergen Blonde. So there's a lot of examples. Mostly, it's funny to see the style guidelines still stick mostly with the country of origin here and not put any other countries having world-class examples because it's not that complex, as I said, brewing process-wise to make. So I'm kind of surprised by that. But you will see these mainstay brands from Belgium regularly in your better beer providers.
And frankly, I take that as a challenge to home brewers and commercial brewers is to brew some more of these beers and have them available in the summer and just see if people like them.
Yeah.
Play around with it. Yeah, I think that'd just be a lot of fun. When we get into the numbers, when we start with the original gravity for a beer like this, we're really talking about 1062 to 1075, which translates as long as it attenuates and ferments down as it should, then we're looking at a ABV of about 6 to 7.5. So in my book, that is elevated. I think of 4 to 6 as average ABV. So this is elevated. Keep in mind, this is the smaller sibling to the BGS that we just talked about a minute ago. So the Belgian beers, when they dry out and when they pick up that extra carbonation because of the sugar, they also tend to be a little bit stronger as well. And so that's one of the ways that you can tell a Belgian from a not Belgian just by looking at some of those little details. When we get into the final gravity, we're looking at 1008 to 1018. That just tells me that this could still have some really good body to this. It should be fairly dry in the finish, dry in the body, but it can have some residual sugars depending on how you ferment it. If we're looking at the Platos on that, we're looking at 15.5 to 18.5 for original Plato. all the way down to about 2 to 4.5 final Plato. When we get into the IBUs, we're looking at 15 to 30. There is a presence of hops and hop flavor and hop bitterness in this beer. But like I said before, it takes a back seat. It's still talking to the drivers up front, but it's not prominent. It's not in the forefront. When we get into the color, we mentioned yellow to gold. That really puts us in 4 to 6 SRM. Or if you're from the European Brewery Convention, then we're looking at 8 to 12. When we're looking at our final kind of alcohol in the glass, if you're thinking in terms of Plato, that really puts us in about 13 to 14 and a half, give or take. But those are the stats just to understand, to memorize. When you look, if you have to know this, if you have to study this stuff, then look at the trends of all the Belgian beers side by side, and you'll notice that they tend to be a little bit more elevated. They tend to kind of have that fermentation character. They tend to have more carbonation, like we talked about, and that's just one of the things that kind of defines that Belgian-ness of the beers. Let's talk about the glass and the temperature.
Yeah, so glassware, if you've seen Leffe, you'll see this almost goblet style, but stemmed and footed
Yeah.
glass. That's a really beautiful expression and allowing the beer to volatilize out of the glass, not forcing that carbonation to stay in. So I would say that footed stemmed kind of almost goblet, not quite tulip, Belgian tulip, but more Leffe goblet style glass is fully the way to go. And I want these beers definitely, I mean, pull them out from the refrigerator temperature, right? They'll warm up, but because these beers to me are more about refreshment and frankly pairing kind of with a sunny day, I want them colder. I'm not asking for these beers to be warmer or cellared in a certain sense. I want these beers fresh. I want these beers cold, and I want them in a clean glass.
Yeah, if I'm drinking one of these in like Florida or Hawaii or Texas or something like that, then I'll pull them from the fridge. I'll pour the glass. I'll hold the glass in my hand, but I'm going to drink that pretty quickly. If you're in
Yeah.
the Northwest where I am, or in Colorado where Julia is, where it might be 60 degrees in the day, I'm going to pull it out of the fridge, let it sit for about 10 minutes before I pour it. I want it like you. I want it cold, but I don't want it freezing cold. And I love how an American blonde may end up in a pint shaker pint glass, but this thing gets a goblet. That's how wonderful this is. When we're talking about pairing, keep in mind this is a light, refreshing, easy drinking beer. It conjures thoughts of a warm day. Uh, I still want some fried foods with this, some French fries with mayonnaise, and that sounds kind of cringeworthy to a lot of palates. But if you try it, especially with a beer like this, it's actually may surprise you. Uh, some savory seafood, some fried calamari would just be wonderful with this. The Some gray shrimp croquettes would be fantastic with this, and give me a bunch of different aged cheeses on in a sunny patio. Then that's what I want to have with this beer. It's just beautiful. How about you,
I
Julia?
Great, and I'll have that meal with you gladly, and then we'll move our way to dessert because that's what my mind is on. I want this with, say, soaked ladyfingers or angel food cake
Mm.
in something like Grand Marnier or some kind of orange liqueur.
Oh yeah.
And then, I want drizzled on top, maybe some candied apricots or peaches. I'm just going to try to counterbalance that lemon and orange that people are expressing often come to them, taste-wise from the yeast. So I just want that dessert, but I want it kind of with this sugary kind of, simple syrup style steeped, beautiful liquid, and then the beer itself becomes a part of the sauce over those marinated ladyfingers or angel food cake. And I always do go to vanilla ice cream to see on the side. And then you could have the angel food cake or ladyfingers that have been steeped in wonderfulness without it and try the beer and then try it with the vanilla ice cream in that bite and see if it helps or hurts the pairing. But either way, you're gonna be pretty dang happy. It sounds tasty to me.
Well, and I just love that you offered up a completely different perspective on it. Same beer, but a massive pivot from something savory to something sweet, and kind of finish the evening. But we're still with the same beer. What a great experience. Um, I hope you'll go out and try and find some of these beers. And if you can't, brew them yourself. Go to your local brewery, craft brewery, and say, "Hey, I need you to make one of these for me because, in the name of science, I need you to brew some Belgian blondes for me." Other than that, go forth, enjoy, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, enjoy your Belgian blonde ales many times and often. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to A Sense of Beer Style, the essential beer style training for those who want to lead in food and beverage. With advanced Cicerones, me, Julia,
And me, Jeremy.
Tune into the next episode as we continue exploring the world of beer styles and what to make of them. We encourage you to listen to the prepisodes to build your foundation and better understand beer styles.
And before the next episode, I'd like to ask you to review the show and let us know what you'd like featured in upcoming episodes. Until next time, here's to you and your sense of beer style. Thank you for listening. Cheers.